This is Charlie Gordon. He is 32 years old and works at Mr. Donner's Bakery. He goes to Miss Kenyon's night school for retarded adults. Charlie has been told by Dr. Strauss to write progress reports about how he feels in his day-to-day experiences. He also has to do tests like making stories up about people's lives in the pictures and racing a mouse named Algernon in maze races. These tests are to let the psychologist know if he can be used for the operation. And he is, so he's really excited about that. The operation is complete, but Charlie complains about not feeling any smarter. One sign that he is getting more intelligent is the fact that he's looking up words in the dictionary and spelling them right. He's super excited to go back to work to show his coworkers how awesome he is. He also gets this TV to help him remember things, but it drives him crazy. When he does finally go back to work, they tease him like crazy too. And he finally beats Algernon in one of the races. Joe, Gimpy, and Frank try to get Charlie to work the dough machine and mess up, but instead he actually does it right, and the others get skeptical. They start noticing something different about Charlie. With his developing intelligence, he remembers things from the past, like the night he tried to hold his baby sister Norma and his mother hit him. Later, his co-workers take him to the bar and make a fool of him in front of everyone, and he remembers other mean things they have done to him. This reminds him of a Valentine's Day from when he was a kid. He liked the girl named Harriet, so he asked the other boys to make a card for her in his name, but they wrote horrible things instead. Poor Charlie. He also has flashbacks about how his parents were fighting all the time, and he remembers their names, which are Rose and Matt. Charlie starts to realize how beautiful Alice Kenyon is and tries to develop a relationship with her, but she keeps telling him to wait. He gets a nightmare about a girl hugging him and touching him because he was always scolded for touching girls. At one point, he notices Gimpy not being honest in his work, even though he's good friends with Mr. Donner. He asks everyone around him for advice, but this moral dilemma needs to be solved by himself. Charlie starts to get interested in all sorts of subjects, and is surprised when other people aren't as smart as him. He is fired from the bakery because the others fear his newfound intelligence. They even sign a petition to get him fired. The progress reports stress Charlie out, and he's annoyed because he feels like a lab specimen. He has a flashback of Norma getting an A on a test and asking for a dog. Rose says yes, but Matt says no, and that causes yet another fight between the two. He also fights with Alice because he just wants to see her, but she tells him to wait. On his way to a convention in Chicago, he thinks back to when he was taken to Dr. Guarno, a doctor who said he could make him smart and was actually really nice. Meanwhile, while talking to fascinated researchers, he asks Niemer if he has read a foreign research paper, but he hasn't, and this baffles him. And then he feels just like Algernon, so he decides to free him and take him back to New York. "Let's go, Algernon," he says. Once Charlie goes back to New York, he moves into an apartment building where he meets his new neighbor, Fay Lillman. He also decides to go back to where his father worked, or just to where his father worked, but his father didn't recognize him and he lost the courage to tell him. While pondering life, Charlie realized that his intelligence will not last forever. With this in mind, he notes Algernon's new aggressive behavior, and he slowly gets into a relationship with Fay. Algernon is noticeably losing IQ and is going to be killed because he is useless. Charlie decides to care for him instead of letting him die. Charlie visits Warren State Home because that's where he'll go once he returns to the state he once was. Algernon stops eating, so they need to force feed him, and Faye starts to become really possessive, and the two break up. He overworks himself so he doesn't lose his brain capabilities. When Charlie agreed to the operation, he thought his intelligence would give him friends, but he's actually really lonely. And he's showing signs of going downhill with his intelligence and the whole thing. And Algernon dies, unfortunately. The last thing Charlie wants to do before he returns to his previous state is to go see his mother. He goes to see her and Norma for the first time in many years. They have a dog named Nappy, which is short for Napoleon, and Norma is very apologetic for everything. Charlie is getting thoughts of suicide. He keeps going to therapy, but one time really stood out. While he was listening, he had an out-of-body experience, and it was like the intelligent part of him had descended into nothingness. His symptoms of intelligence decrease are rapid. This upsets Alice, but she finally kisses him, but it was almost like a goodbye kiss. His landlady has to start taking care of him, but he's really aggressive towards her. One day, he tries going back to the bakery, and a new worker hurts him and teases him. But this guy gets fired because the others stand up for him. In the end, he writes about being a dumb guy who contributed to science and says goodbye to everyone. Lastly, he reminds Alice to put flowers on Algernon's grave. The end.